Silence is not weakness. It's a superpower in disguise. While the world shouts for attention, the truly powerful sit quietly and observe. Because those who know the most often speak the least, they understand something vital. Silence builds strength, focus, and unstoppable momentum. We live in a noisy world. Everyone has something to prove, something to say, something to shout from the rooftops, but ask yourself, who are the ones actually achieving greatness? Who are the ones making moves, shifting tides, rising to the top? It's not the loudest in the room. It's the quietest, the most disciplined, the most. Silence sharpens your vision. It clears the fog from your mind. It allows you to observe the moves of others while preparing your own strategy in peace. When you learn to be silent, not just with your voice, but with your emotions, reactions, and energy, you step into a position of power most never experience. Because silence is a form of self-control, and self-control is the gatekeeper of all success. Silence builds power and strategy because it gives you the ability to observe without distraction, reflect without interruption, and move without detection. When you are silent, you are not giving away your thoughts, your emotions, or your plans. This makes you unreadable to others. And in a world where everyone wants to know your next move, that unreadability becomes your shield and your weapon. While others are eager to speak, defend themselves, show off their knowledge, or gain approval, the silent individual watches, listens, and absorbs everything. That quiet observation becomes a superpower. You begin to see patterns others miss. You hear what's not being said. You notice people's intentions, motives, and behaviors that are hidden behind their words. When you are silent, you can read the room. You can detect tension, weakness, lies, and insecurity without reacting to it because you're not engaged in the noise. You're grounded in awareness. That awareness turns into knowledge, and that knowledge allows you to plan with precision. People often mistake silence for ignorance, assuming that someone who doesn't speak must not have much to say or offer. But this misjudgment works to the silent person's advantage, because while the loud ones are busy revealing their hand, trying to prove their worth or dominating conversations, the silent person is watching it all unfold, storing information, gaining insight, and quietly preparing. The silent person becomes the master of timing, choosing exactly when to speak, when to act, and when to strike. That kind of control comes from inner confidence and strategic thinking, not impulsiveness or insecurity. There is no rush to be seen. There is no hunger for validation. Silence removes the need to constantly explain or justify yourself. Instead, you begin to operate from a place of purpose, not performance, in any environment. Whether it's a workplace, a negotiation, a leadership role, or a personal relationship, the one who remains calm and quiet often has the upper hand. That's because people reveal more than they should when they're uncomfortable with silence. They fill the gaps with their fears, their assumptions, or their nervous energy. And in doing so, they expose their vulnerabilities. Meanwhile, the silent one gathers everything. They use every interaction as an opportunity to learn, not to impress. They make mental notes of who is genuine, who is manipulative, who is strong, and who is fragile. This knowledge is never wasted. It becomes the foundation for decisions, moves, and boundaries. Over time, this strategy leads to power. Not power over others in a controlling sense, but personal power. The kind of power that comes from knowing you don't need to react to everything, you don't need to explain yourself to anyone, and you don't need to rush your process just to be seen. Being silent also keeps you unpredictable. People can't figure you out. And in a world where predictability often equals vulnerability, unpredictability becomes strength. No one knows what drives you, what hurts you, what excites you, or what you're working on. They only see your results when they're ready to be shown. And by then, you've already done the work. Silence protects your process, guards your intentions, and amplifies your impact. While others are distracted by being heard, you are focused on becoming great. Emotional silence is strength because it shows mastery over your inner world in a way that most people never achieve. In a world that constantly provokes you, pressures you, and pulls at your emotions, the ability to remain silent in the face of anger, disrespect, and chaos is not weakness, it is discipline. When someone says something cruel, ignorant, or provocative, the average person immediately reacts. They defend themselves, argue back, or express their pain and frustration in an attempt to be understood or validated. But in doing so, they give away their power. They let the other person control their emotions and dictate their state of mind. Emotional silence is the opposite of that. It is the decision to stay calm, stay quiet, and stay grounded, even when everything around you is trying to pull you out of character. When you choose silence over emotional reaction, you are not suppressing your feelings. You are channeling them into self-controlled. You are training your mind not to respond to every insult or injustice, not because you're indifferent, but because you understand the price of reacting. Every time you lash out, argue, or try to prove a point, you are leaking energy. You are wasting time. You are giving attention to people or situations that don't deserve access to your peace. Emotional silence protects that peace. It gives you time to think. It gives you distance from the trigger. It gives you clarity. Instead of reacting in the moment, you observe the moment. You study the emotion. You ask yourself what it's trying to teach you. And then when you do choose to respond, it's from a place of power, not pain. People who live in emotional silence are often misunderstood. Others may see them as cold, distant, or passive, but what they don't see is the war being won inside. They don't understand the amount of strength it takes to stay calm when someone disrespects you. They don't know how hard it is to walk away from drama without trying to explain yourself. They don't see the power in the pause, the space between what happens and how you choose to handle it. That space is where growth lives. That space is where wisdom develops. And the more you practice silence in emotionally charged situations, the more emotional intelligence you gain. You begin to see that not everything deserves a reaction. Not everyone deserves a response. Some people want to drain your energy by baiting you into arguments. Some people thrive on your emotional instability. But when you are silent, you deny them that control. You show them that your peace is not for sale. Silence also teaches people how to treat you. When you don't respond to disrespect, but instead remove your presence, you send a stronger message than words ever could. You're telling the world that you don't beg to be understood. You don't chase approval. You don't fight to be seen. You are secure enough to stay quiet, to let your actions speak, and to walk away without explaining your worth. That kind of silence is intimidating to people who rely on emotional chaos to feel powerful. They don't know what to do with someone who doesn't flinch, doesn't fight, and doesn't fold. And that's exactly where your power lies, in your stillness, in your decision to rise above the noise, not by shouting louder, but by walking higher. When you master emotional silence, you become untouchable, not because nothing affects you, but because you've learned to respond with thought, not impulse. You've trained yourself to pause, to reflect, and to choose your battles wisely. You stop trying to win arguments and start focusing on winning peace. You stop chasing closure and start building inner clarity. Emotional silence becomes your armor. It shields you from manipulation, from overreactions, from unnecessary drama. It doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you've become the master of what you allow to control you. Mystery creates influence because when people can't easily figure you out, they become curious, intrigued, and sometimes even intimidated by your presence. In a world where everyone overshares, overexplains, and constantly broadcasts every thought and move, the person who chooses to stay silent and private stands out as rare and powerful. When you hold back your opinions, your emotions, and your plans, people begin to wonder what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and what you're going to do next. That uncertainty gives you leverage. The less people know about your mindset and intentions, the more control you have over how they perceive you. They can't prepare against you, they can't predict you, and they can't manipulate you easily. Mystery keeps you in a position of strength because it creates psychological distance. People may be around you, they may interact with you, but they never fully know where they stand with you. That ambiguity forces them to be more cautious, more respectful, and more mindful in their dealings with you. When you're mysterious, you naturally hold people's attention longer because you leave them with questions instead of answers. They begin to notice your energy instead of your words. They analyze your body language, your expressions, your silence, trying to find meaning in every little detail. That's when influence begins to form, not because you forced it, but because you withheld what everyone else gives away for free. The moment you become too accessible, too predictable, or too eager to explain yourself, you lose your edge. Mystery is what keeps people leaning in, wondering what makes you tick, what drives you, and what your next move will be. And because they don't know, they start respecting the parts of you they can't define. That respect leads to influence, not based on volume, but on presence. People begin to talk about you when you're not around. They begin to speculate, to assume, and to imagine things about you. And that's how your name, your reputation, and your aura start working for you behind the scenes. Being mysterious is not about being fake or distant. It's about being intentional. It's about knowing when to speak and when to hold back. It's about choosing to keep your emotional world private, your moves quiet, and your boundaries solid. That kind of control takes inner strength. It requires the ability to resist the temptation to be seen, heard, or validated all the time. Because when you're truly confident, you don't feel the need to prove anything. You don't explain your silence. You don't announce your growth. You don't defend your choices. You simply let the results show when they're ready. And until then, you keep moving in silence. That silence becomes your brand. It becomes the reason people take you seriously, not because you're loud, but because you're deliberate. Not because you're everywhere, but because your absence creates presence. People miss you when you're not around. They pay closer attention when you finally speak, and they value your words because they know you don't waste them. Mystery also protects your peace. The less people know about your dreams, your struggles, and your thoughts, the less power they have to judge, criticize, or sabotage them. You reduce the noise. You minimize the outside influence, and you keep your path clear of unnecessary interference. By being mysterious, you don't give others the map to your mind. You keep your power within. You observe, you process, and you evolve silently. And when the time is right, you reveal only what's necessary, never everything. That selectiveness is what makes people respect you even more. They understand that access to you is a privilege, not a right. That kind of presence builds influence that doesn't need to shout, perform, or beg for attention. It demands it silently. Silence fuels growth and mastery because real transformation never happens in the spotlight. It happens in solitude, in the quiet spaces where no one is watching, no one is praising, and no one is interfering. When you step away from the noise of the world, the opinions, the expectations, the distractions, you begin to hear yourself clearly, and that is where the foundation of growth begins. You stop performing for others and start building for yourself. You stop chasing approval and start chasing purpose. Growth demands your full attention, your discipline, and your ability to be alone with your thoughts long enough to confront them, question them, and reshape them. Mastery requires repetition, dedication, and an almost obsessive focus on improvement. And none of that happens when you are surrounded by people who constantly pull you in different directions. Silence gives you the space to become obsessed with progress without external validation. It allows you to lock in, to train, to study, to build, and to refine your skills in peace, away from the opinions of others. The world often praises visibility, recognition, and being known. But the truth is, the ones who master their craft are usually the ones working silently in the background when no one else is paying attention. They are not talking about what they're doing. They are doing it. They are not trying to impress the world with announcements. They are letting the results speak later. That kind of silent grind is the birthplace of excellence. Because when you're not performing, you're free to fail, to experiment, and to grow without shame. You make mistakes in silence, you learn in silence, you recover in silence, and because of that, your foundation becomes unshakable. People might not see you coming, but they will see you arrive. The silent phase is where your roots grow deep. It's where your discipline is tested, your consistency is built, and your mindset is shaped. And the deeper your roots, the stronger you'll stand when success finally comes. Growth in silence also teaches you patience. In a world addicted to instant gratification, choosing the silent path trains you to wait, to endure, and to respect the process. You stop looking for shortcuts because you understand that mastery isn't about speed, it's about depth. And depth takes time. It takes repetition. It takes lonely hours when no one is clapping for you and no one is cheering you on. Fascinating. But it's in those lonely hours that the magic happens. That's when the average get filtered out and the disciplined rise. Silence strips away the performance and forces you to face yourself. It reveals your weaknesses and gives you the clarity to fix them. It highlights your strengths and gives you the time to sharpen them. You start building a version of yourself that doesn't need noise to feel worthy, that doesn't need attention to feel driven, and that doesn't need applause to feel accomplished. The people who truly win in life are not the ones constantly showing their progress. They're the ones who stay quiet and let the end result be so undeniable that it speaks louder than words ever could. Mastery doesn't need a microphone. It needs silence, solitude, and obsession with bettering yourself day by day. Every hour you spend in focused silence adds up. It becomes the invisible work that no one claps for, but everyone notices once it's revealed. That's when people say you came out of nowhere, when in reality you were just too focused to be seen. Growth that happens in silence lasts longer because it's not built on approval or attention. It's built on purpose, pain, and persistence. That is the kind of growth that can't be shaken by opinions, setbacks, or circumstances. That is the kind of growth that makes you unstoppable. Listening more than speaking is one of the most underrated yet powerful habits a person can develop, because true wisdom comes not from expressing everything you know, but from absorbing what others miss. When you listen carefully, you start to notice the subtleties in people's words, the contradictions in their stories, the emotions behind their tone, and the intentions hidden beneath the surface. Speaking reveals what you already know, but listening opens the door to learning what you don't. People who talk constantly are often driven by ego. They want to be seen, heard, and validated. But those who listen are driven by understanding. They're not trying to prove themselves, they're trying to grow. That shift in mindset creates a different kind of power, quiet power, the power to walk into any room and read the energy before making a move, the power to let others expose their character while you remain composed, the power to let information come to you instead of chasing it. When you listen more than you speak, you learn people's patterns. You begin to see who they really are without them even realizing it. Most people reveal everything if you just let them talk long enough. Their values, fears, insecurities, and even intentions become visible through casual conversations if you know how to listen deeply. You gain insight into what drives them, what triggers them, and what they're trying to hide. That insight gives you leverage, not to manipulate, but to move wisely. You stop making emotional decisions and start making informed ones. You know who to trust, who to avoid, and who deserves your energy. While others waste time reacting to noise, you stay grounded because you've been quietly gathering knowledge. Listening also makes people underestimate you. They mistake your silence for passivity, not realizing that you're observing everything. That's a strategic advantage. When people don't see you as a threat, they let their guard down, and that's when you start to see their true colors. Listening is also a sign of emotional intelligence. It means you value understanding more than dominance. In conversations, the person who listens controls the direction. They ask the right questions. They steer the dialogue. They create a space where others feel heard, and that builds trust. In relationships, both personal and professional, listening creates deeper connections. It shows respect. It makes people feel safe around you. And when people feel safe, they open up, they share more, they align with you. That kind of trust is invaluable. It's how leaders are born, not by shouting commands, but by listening to the needs and strengths of the people they lead. When you listen, you become the person everyone feels they can turn to, not because you always have the answers, but because you're present enough to understand the question fully. There's also a discipline in choosing silence when the urge to speak is strong. In arguments, it's easy to interrupt, to defend yourself, to prove a point, but sometimes the most powerful move is to let others speak until they run out of steam. Let them reveal themselves. Let them talk themselves into corners. When you stay calm and listen, you maintain control, not over the other person, but over yourself. That control is what separates the wise from the reactive. You learn to pause to assess and to respond only when necessary. And often you'll find that silence says more than any argument could. People don't expect silence, especially when they're trying to provoke you. So when you give it to them, it disarms them. It shifts the power dynamic. It shows them that you are not governed by impulse, but by insight. When you train yourself to listen more than you speak, you become a student of life. Every conversation becomes a lesson. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to learn something new. And the more you listen, the more you realize that most people just want to be heard, not challenged. Give them that space. Let them speak. You don't have to agree. You don't have to engage. Just listen, understand, and move in silence. That habit alone can change the way you operate in every area of your life. Energy is precious, and not everyone deserves access to it. The moment you learn to protect your energy by staying silent, you begin to conserve your power and reclaim control over your emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being. Not every comment needs a response. Not every attack needs a defense, and not every opinion needs your validation. When you realize how much energy is wasted explaining yourself, arguing with people who don't care to understand you, or trying to prove your worth to those committed to misunderstanding you, you begin to understand the true power of silence. Silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. It's choosing your battles wisely. It's understanding that your energy is a limited resource and not everyone qualifies to receive it. The more you talk, the more you invite opinions, criticism, and distractions. The more you stay silent, the more you focus, observe, and protect your inner peace. You begin to distinguish between those who genuinely care about you and those who are simply curious, judgmental, or draining. That awareness gives you the ability to move smarter, not louder. When you give your energy to every conflict, every misunderstanding, every drama, you dilute your purpose. You scatter your attention across people and situations that do nothing to elevate you. But when you hold your energy close and guard your space, you stay centered. You become selective, not just with who you speak to, but with what you give mental and emotional space to. That kind of discipline creates power. It allows you to invest your energy only in what matters: your goals, your peace, your growth. You begin to see silence as self-respect, not avoidance. Because choosing not to engage doesn't mean you're afraid. It means you value yourself too much to waste your strength on noise. You learn that you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to, and not everything deserves your reaction. Most people are not looking for understanding. They're looking for dominance, for validation, or for attention. Engaging with them drains you and gives them power. Ignoring them protects you and preserves your power. The more silent you become, the more you start to feel your energy building within you. You're not leaking it through constant talking, explaining, or defending. You're storing it, redirecting it into the things that truly matter. You become more productive, more intuitive, and more peaceful. You're not caught up in unnecessary emotional roller coasters because you've stopped handing out access to people who don't deserve it. You realize that the wrong people feed off your reactions. They grow stronger every time you let them pull you into their chaos. But when you go quiet, they're left with nothing. Your silence becomes your shield. Your stillness becomes your statement. And that drives them crazy because they can no longer control your mood, your thoughts, or your energy. Choosing silence isn't about being passive. It's about knowing where your power is most effective. Sometimes the strongest message is the one you don't say. Sometimes the most powerful move is not to move at all. When people expect you to react and you don't, you shift the entire dynamic. You maintain control and they lose their grip. You stay calm and they become confused. You protect your energy and they're left trying to figure you out. That's not just self-control, that's self-mastery. And that silence, you start to realize that your energy is sacred. It's the fuel behind your focus, your creativity, your peace, and your purpose. If you keep giving it to people who only drain it, you'll never have enough left for yourself. But when you preserve it, guard it, and only share it with those who truly deserve it, you move through life with a different kind of power. Quiet, steady, and unstoppable. Here's the truth. The life you want is already within reach. But to get it, you have to stop talking and start transforming. Be silent. Build quietly. Let your hustle speak louder than any words ever could. Be the one who doesn't just dream, but executes. Not the one who posts their plan, but finishes it. Not the one who reacts to critics, but rises above them. Because in the end, silence is the real language of greatness. And those who master it get everything they've ever wanted in life. So be silent.